feeling. Put your hands up for the summer dreaming. Hands up for the summer feeling. Put your hands up for the summer dreaming. Turn back the tide, ignite the feeling. Rewind your mind, summer dreaming. Two hearts collide in the evening. You make me feel alive, that's what I'm feeling. Whoa, whoa,
Welcome, guys. We are here to cast some LCK. My name is FLICKR. With me is FLICKR. How are you doing today? We have some good lineups for League of Legends today. How are you doing today, FLICKR?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm ready to solo kill in the mid lane. It's what I always do, and it's Jin Air today, so I've still got some things to pay off for that 94-minute game last year.
Yeah, you know, that was definitely a long game. We both played in it. It was a very big and long game of League of Legends. We may get some more of that today. Definitely should be a lot of fun. And
You're speaking my language. I anticipated what you were going to say 5 seconds ago.
How did you know?
Because I'm you.
It's almost like we're the same person.
It's like that, but not quite.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't know.
Oh, boy. Thank you very much to the Chinese fans for bringing on something new and something beautiful for today's broadcast. SKT Jin Air, sometimes beautiful, sometimes scary. Is it going to be a dream or a nightmare? You never really know until it's over, Valdez, and it's usually the Achilles show. You're here today for what could be anything.
Yeah, we transformed back into our original selves, and that means that we got to cast some interesting League of Legends. Could be the long game that we had the last time around. Achilles is in Korea. The curse could be real. But League of Legends has changed a bit since that era. Of course, now the games are a bit shorter, I should say, rather than the super long ones we used to get because you couldn't end the game with Baron and Elder buffs. They buffed those since then. We're taking a look at the lineups here, the standings. SKT in 7th, but they're 5-5, which is kind of interesting.
They got the longest winning streak also, 4 wins, all the way back from 1 and 5. And the schedule gets harder. They've definitely had the chances to win. They beat Genji before Genji completely got into form. But now is the real kind of interesting path after today. Jin Air is kind of the tail end of their difficult schedule, but I believe it's their only match for this week. So can only beat the team in front of you. Jin Air Greenwings are still winless in terms of matches so far, as our monitor is doing some interesting things, trying to get it all fixed up here so we can watch on like you guys will at home. Jin Air and SKT, weird and wonderful is probably the subtext for this matchup of these two orgs.
And the last time they did go up against each other in round 1, I don't remember it being any kind of crazy long games. We kind of just had straightforward League of Legends. SKT on a big winning streak. Jin Air still looking for their first series win, but honestly, SKT, maybe a couple of weeks ago we could have said this match might be close, but not anymore, as SKT definitely doing better.
But you should remember that the opening match of the season, it was SKT versus Jin Air. It was 3 games, and that's one of the 2 Jin Air game victories so far in summer. So there is still some business around it. SKT will want to win 2-0. The original Living Nexus, we call him the Fountain Laser, but it's the same idea. Teddy built up all of that reputation on Jin Air, and now he's against Root, who people have been saying the same sort of 1v9, and wow, really wish he was on a better team. We got to see Teddy on SK Telecom. He's had largely a pretty strong year, went over to MSI, is now an LCK champion. Root has had an impressive year on a struggling team as well, but he doesn't always show up in the big games. It does feel like sometimes when the nameplates are on, Root doesn't show the same level of performance.
Yeah, I mean, he's still ramping it up. He's definitely a new player as well. And it's interesting they call him the original Living Nexus versus the new fangled Living Nexus. We call him the Fountain Laser here, but essentially the same thing as these two AD carries always like to carry by themselves. Although, I don't know, Teddy was doing that for a while, even when SKT were in their slump, but I don't feel like now that they're winning a bunch, it's solely on the backs of Teddy, which is kind of interesting. But we are going to take a look here at some of the stats, of course, for the bottom three. You have to keep in mind that this is only for week 5, but SKT having one of the best week 5s out of any team.
They definitely have looked in much higher gear post-Rift Rivals. Yes, they beat Genji KT before. They repeated the victory over KT, the Hanwha win, but the manner in the win was more impressive post-Rift Rivals. Just feels like they're going to stack on and reach 5-match win streak when they take down Jin Air, which is seeming very likely. And then from there, it gets more tricky. So they were front-loaded with a lot of the difficult teams. They lost a FLICKR King Zone Sandbox, Damwon, Griffin in a row. They need to pay back some of those teams if they're to make playoffs, because SKT, they're always targeted to make kind of final at minimum, let alone finals. So playoffs is always an expectation. You want to pay back. As we look back at some highlights, it's Jin Air highlights, so they're always a little bit weird and wonderful, and the clips sometimes have to get cut a bit earlier, Valdez.
There were a couple of nice moments up against Sandbox, as we are seeing here, but this was amongst the games in which Sandbox was winning 2-0. So I do remember this one. This was where Root was he really was trying to be that Fountain Laser on the Ezreal. He was so far ahead of everybody else on his team, and he just couldn't do it anyway. It was so sad for him to watch for us. As now we're taking a look at some SKT highlights. Clid bringing in the Jarvan. The Jarvan definitely becoming a lot more popular nowadays.
This was some really clean league. This is my favorite play where FLICKR went for the turret dive, pushed into Jarvan as Lux was roaming up at the same time to throw up a shield. I believe that was cut off from the play. The synergy between Clid and his laners is back, and that was what was lost post-Rift Rivals, was finding a way to integrate the MVP of MSI. That was the guy who really took SKT to their wins back at MSI, was Clid. Wonderful in that tournament. He's come back and was in great form, and the Jarvan, which we're seeing much more of from everyone else, is an old favorite of his, and he looks razor sharp every time he can lock it in.
This was a fun game to watch if you were an SKT fan, as some of these plays were just the most purest of dunking, especially on that Jarvan getting the 5-man Cataclysm. So we'll see if that makes it through. As the key player comparison, no surprise here, the two Jin Air AD carries going head-to-head.
But look at this. Root actually has a stat on Jin Air where he's better than the opponent. He actually has a legitimate stat that you can look at. For the gold that's invested into him, he's actually outperforming damage-wise than Teddy. And that is a cool stat to be able to show. And it's a stat that we have pretty exclusive to the LCK, this damage per gold spent. It's a really intriguing one. It can be thrown off. There are champions who do more damage for a cheaper item build. Ezreal's definitely a cheater champion, and Root's played more of it. But still, it is a cool stat. Still deserves it. Let's give you guys the lineups here. You're never quite sure with Jin Air. They do mess around with their lineups, and they will not be fielding the player who, next to Root, many people would say has been their most impressive performer. Will be C's starting in the jungle. Malrang will be starting on the bench.
That is true. Lindarang also coming up here to the top lane for them. Tana was playing a bunch for Jin Air, and even Chungo came in the last time instead of Grace, but now we're kind of bringing in some of the more experienced players into the solo lanes once again for the Jin Air Greenwings. And we'll have to wait and see which concoction of different players, different teammates can actually find a win. Everybody believes that there should be at least one series win. We're just not sure when that Jin Air is going to strike.
And it seems like everybody agrees that effort should be starting for SKT on both the internal and external part of the org. Mata played at Rift Rivals, but effort has maintained a starting spot since the week before Rift Rivals. And you know what? They haven't lost a match when it comes to series victories in that time. They are on quite the win streak. In fact, They're 8-0 since their loss to Griffin with effort in the starting roster, so hard to mess with something that's working. See Zephyr take a bow. Seems like Coma has finally been able to take a breather. He's in the back. He's not going to be on the stage for now. Let's get down. Those banners, they're working today. Feels good about that. Kellin, Root, Grace, Seas, and Lindarang starting roster for Jin Air.
It's going to be a good one. I just can't wait to see what Root and Teddy can do head-to-head. You know, in the beginning, the first match that SKT had up against Jin Air, we got to see a little bit of it, but I feel like now the season is more developed. We have those storylines coming through because Root is actually performing to a higher level and is becoming the sole carry of his team, whereas we didn't really have that as defined, I would say, in spring. And, yeah, I mean, Clid, we're getting the zoom in on him. We saw his Jarvan the last time around. I'd say no doubt that there will be some focus on this pick today.
And Seas is a player who is really interesting. Remember the last time we saw him was Kai'Sa jungle, Valdez, so I'm happy that makes the VOD. The VOD cut is around here. Kai'Sa jungle from Seas was interesting. I think I pronounced that right. We'll see what he's got today. I'm always down for some weird and wonderful.
Yeah, you know, we have to mention this again. Mordekaiser and Qiyana are available for this week. We're still on 9-13. No 9-14 shenanigans yet. I think some fixing still has to be done over there, but we do have those available, and we saw Qiyana played yesterday twice by Lava to 2 losses, so we'll see if anybody can pick up a win on either of those 2 champs today.
9-14 potentially next week. There's going to need to be some fixing there in terms of what's good and what's bad. I feel like we're still learning here in the LCK. We've been on 9-13 for a while, but Mordekaiser plus Qiyana available, remember, today, guys, makes things a little bit different. We saw double Qiyana from Lava, but not very impressive on the side of Humble Life. I think the power level of that champion's pretty undeniable, so I'm excited to see FLICKR, for example, play a first-time champion. He doesn't have many left, right? He's played most of them in his long and storied career, but the new mid laner comes out. There's something to be hyped about. Both of them go through the initial bans. We'll see where the priorities. Lux is available and pretty frequently picked up here, but the Tahm Kench also can be super high priority.
Yeah, Sir Thomas coming on through, and I mean, he has a very nice win ratio. I mean, this guy definitely likes to shut down a lot of the action in the bottom lane. He is very good with Varus nowadays, and Varus Braum becoming more and more popular as well.
Annie Hover, I think, perhaps a ode to the current live server where Annie can be quite stuntastic. Don't think we'll be seeing Annie.
It's very stunning for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Everyone's seen the highlight clips in FLICKR talking about how, oh, it seems a bit overbuffed on the good old Annie. Instead, going to be Root back on the Ezreal. Wants to keep his damage percentage per gold spent high on this Ezreal. Gray's going to take a first round. Azir again. Now, we saw this matchup where the Qiyana was unleashed. I think everyone wants to see FLICKR lock in Qiyana here and show us exactly what's possible with that pick. But sadly, Corky's up.
Well, that's a little bit anticlimactic, but it's a great pick into the mid lane of Azir. And FLICKR can play it very well, so perhaps he can instead show us some nice plays with the good old Corky. All reliable, you can call him.
But where are we going to get our hype from, Valdez? We need that little bit of extra tonic.
No jungle yet for Jin Air.
I would imagine, given that there is no jungle for SKT, a Jarvan ban might be considered with how good Clid has been on it. Could just ban Jarvan Lee and be like, well, took you off your ultra comfort. Would still be plenty of other junglers, but that is a consideration for Jin Air against SKT. There's the first part of the twofer when it comes to answering Clid. I wonder what you ban against Seas, because apart from Karthus, his Kindred is pretty aggressive. He can play that one, does it mostly in solo queue, and honestly, we know he plays Karthus like Kindred, so it's the aggressive picks you worry about. The Xinjiao contestation level might be really high in this draft, especially if the bans go as we expected. So if we do end up seeing a Jarvan ban, you could just see Xin be locked in for Clid on the side of SKT. Not always a contested jungle pick, but we're getting towards the dregs here. Sejuani is up, but so far no lane synergy to Sejuani. has put down the priority there a little bit. This final ban from Jin Air, it's actually going to be the Aurelia, so just don't want to deal with potentially a strong lane for the Sejuani to jungle around. But does anyone take the Sej? Because Jarvan seems like a pretty clear pickup for both teams.
The Jarvan is definitely sticking out like a sore thumb. You have an answer to the Sejuani as well. We've seen Trundle into it. We've seen Olaf into it. And let's see what Jin Air is going to answer the Sejuani pick with.
Now, if we do see Sejuani, if we do see the priority a bit higher than we might have thought, Jarvan seems so clean, I think that says a lot about what Kahn might be playing. A Renekton, for example, would have great synergy with this Sejuani, so we're waiting to see. And Lindarang loves to go for an Aatrox here, so the Fiora potential also there for Kahn. So this makes me hyped. But our final pick on the red side.
Well, you called the Aatrox.
Uh-oh. Is it going to be the Hanlabong / Kahn favorite in Fiora on the red side? Very real chance here with Lock in there. Wait, Kellin?
Yeah, just do it.
You don't cry on stage. You got to cry
just
before.
Go ahead, you know.
Silas Jungle.
Oh, that's
soft
another
answer. Yeah,
okay.
Soft answer to the Sejuani. So Jarvan does fall through picks and bans. There it is, baby. Super obvious. Papa called it. Everyone called it. If you see the Sejuani, you know it's going to be some level of lane bully. Renekton or Fiora. If it's the Aatrox, it's always going to be the Fiora. Well, it's time for Kahn to have one of those days out. We'll see if Jin Air can do anything to slow that one down.
I mean, just the celerity, the quickness with which Effort picked that Fiora really makes you understand the way they were feeling about it as well. It's like, oh, really? You really want to pick in that Aatrox?
Because the thing is, the comp actually fits a Fiora really well. And it would have been similar for Renekton, but the reason I say that is, what does this comp do? Well, Corki and Varus show up with their items, and you're like, oh god, this siege is really annoying.
Yeah.
Brom's there holding up his shield, Sejuani's just throwing out her ult mostly defensively, and then Fiora's just smashing Aatrox in the 1v1. So it fits 4-1 in a really concise way, and it feels like if this plays out as the draft, and we, as you mentioned, the assertive Fiora lock-in suggests, it might be one of those games where you say, hey, this is the prototype of a 4-1 game that other teams around the world can learn in. And we haven't been able to say that about SKT too often, but in the form they're in, and with a draft like this, very clear win conditions, and we can be pretty high level about how even the jungle pathing is set up and where it needs to be protected to get going. Because the moment Fiora gets going, the going gets real tough for Jin Air Greenwings.
And it wouldn't be the first time we've seen Kahn pop off on that Fiora, so we'll see if he can do it again tonight here. Match 53. We're here in round 2. Game number 1 of Jin Air up against SKT. Let's do it. Surprise of no one, the SKT fans have come out in throngs tonight. Everybody showing up for this gigantic matchup for SKT and bringing in all the fun signs and all the cool stuff. I saw someone had one of those faces we had with the handle, actually, in a bigger, more gigantic FLICKR face there in the audience. I'm kind of jealous.
I have some more anecdotes, but just an important thing to talk about was the sweeper start from the Sejuani into clearing the top side ward, because I wanted to talk about how, given the very obvious win conditions here, there was going to be some pretty important approaches to this game. And already, you're motioning, and the observers are motioning, that they see the same thing we did, and there's going to be some adjustments. Lindarang is going to be starting mid lane, and Azir top, which we've actually already seen in some other regions. We saw it as a counter to top lane Mordekaiser in the LPL earlier this week. You know, we saw Vayne as well as a counter in other regions. So this is an approach you can take to try to target a strong top laner, and definitely not a lane that Fiora is too excited about. So cool little adjustment here. Jin Air sees the same bad news, and it might still evolve to be a bad news story for Jin Air if they ever end up with Fiora versus Aatrox with a TP advantage perhaps. But for now, the adjustment is there, but can Grace play top lane Azir with the same kind of strength that he can potentially in the mid lane, given that the longer lane makes it harder for Azir to do his wantonly aggressive pushing thing?
Well, level 1 is going to be a bit fun for the side of Grace, of course, with that up against the melee champ. But FLICKR's having a similar situation here in the mid lane, where the push and the poke is going to be quite real. So FLICKR gets to have a little bit of extra fun, whereas Grace will have a bit of fun here in the early levels up against Kahn's melee Fiora.
There would have been a time where you could have delayed this, for example, sent Aatrox top lane in the early game and then said, all right, now Azir can try to make this work. But I would say that now power level of the Aatrox changed, and it's very, very difficult from early. Clid's already topside.
Ooh, they wanted that Q out. He's trying to burst down Kahn, but that is not going to happen. As easy as you would like, just hand it over to the side of Clid. He's going to pick up first blood.
It's pretty abysmally poor lane power or lane positioning from Grace at 3 minutes to be that overextended. He wasn't even trying to break a freeze. He was still harassing, so it seemed very, very tone deaf to where the jungler could be. Felt more like zombie pushing than smart kind of top laner mechanics. We already alluded to that it's much harder to play top lane as a harassing champion like Azir, especially because you're going to be less experienced at it, as a resident mid laner. So pretty poor look there. If it was a top laner playing the Azir, I think it would have been a lot more kind of heads up about how to play the lane, but that was trying to play the matchup without playing the lane state at all.
Yeah, definitely kind of awkward, and now you can see already Kahn is just getting in there, but he does have C's that is coming on in for a gank this time around. Kahn still has his flash, is going to be able to dodge out of the way, but did have to use his summoner to survive.
Flash down is happy news for Grace situationally, and now he has a summoner advantage, but that's all he's going to get. Sylas doesn't want to spend too much of his time topside. The gank assist for an Azir pre-6 is very minimal, so that's probably just a kind of token visit. Gets a flash, which is very good news for C's, but hard to recreate that until post-6. In terms of the Sylas, I'm sure people are wondering why didn't they just try kind of flexing around and sending Sylas into the top lane, but the lane trades are too difficult now to actually pilot a Sylas top lane, and Sylas already is losing camps as a result, and you can't even get involved on the Raptors there either.
So Clid, he gets first blood, takes both of the Scuttle Crabs, goes in, takes the Raptors, spots the blue as well. He's like, oh, C's has to clear his whole left side jungle as well. I have time to come in here and steal this. Perfect timing to take that away, and this guy is just putting on a course on jungling right now.
And you have to think about how that all happens. It's because with the TP back in from Grace onto lane, you need the jungle there, right? Because you can't zombie die twice. So the jungler had to go top. Clid was already aware of basically every movement the Sylas was going to go on the moment that Azir had to teleport back to the top side. And then it's even better than you allude to, because he clears that camp as his Gromp up is alive to path further for a power farm. So now he has a huge amount of camp lead, and also he can go into Krug's Raptors and be there for a counter gank in mid without sweating, without missing a beat. So this is going to be an early level 6 and a huge XP lead, all because Grace's top lane management was not up to par.
All it takes is one small mistake, and all of a sudden, the game can blow wide open, as we may have a re-swap here, as SKT tried to respond to the swap, but Jin Air say no. We really want to keep up this swap that we had before, which means that Grace will be going into the mid lane. We're taking a look at the runes there, actually. I didn't quite get to see, I think it was...
I think they're looking at armor and magic resist. That's the focus here, so I think it's just trying to keep the right runing there and not be kind of horribly taken down by trades. Here we go, we're having the happy fun times, and you know what?
Somebody start the music.
But who does this benefit? Sees my fine FLICKR.
Okay, FLICKR, awkward spot here. See what he does. Doesn't look like he has Valkyrie. Flashes away and sees is going to be able to flash in and pick up that kill.
Now, usually this would benefit the Sejuani, who was jungling topside, but right then Sejuani wasn't there for a counter game. Valkyrie ostensibly was on cooldown, and that's actually a big moment in the game. Good job by C's to create some chaos, and this is one thing we can say about him. The Kai'Sa jungle we talked about, the Karthus jungle where he plays it very aggressively, not power farming like most people would recommend. This is his play style, and I'm impressed that C's was able to find something, given that so far he's kind of been forced to respond to lanes rather than do his own thing.
Looks like they want to set up a dive here as well. Kahn is level 6. We'll see how this does go down as Lindarang is thinking about rotating. Okay, hesitated there for a bit, but is going to follow up. Okay, sees.
Watch for the W timing from Kahn. When will the riposte come out?
Yeah, gotta wait for that. They want to do a bit of damage first. There's the riposte to get away from that Aatrox, but he is going to be able to tank it up, Grace, and make sure that Lindarang can go in to help out for the kill.
Well executed. They're going to get turret play answered, though, in the mid lane, and because of the timing, we're at 7 minutes, Clid is going to get a lot of camps here. So we're going to have a very thick Piggy in this game. She is going to be very ahead, is the Sejuani. And it feels really good to catch SKT a couple of times. Clid can't get the full ult off and thus get the healing field to live there, even though the riposte timing is good. But this delays an inevitability about Fiora versus Aatrox, and Clid can just create problems in other lanes to make this respond. As they're coming for a responding gank bot side. Only Kellin here for now, and he seems well aware.
Seems more like a pressure trade for now. Just, get them an extra plate, maybe steal the Krugs. But at the end of the day, is just going to have to back away.
Still going to be, the entire AP enchant done. Is going to get the replay here. With the timing bar, it would have been much more interesting here, but there was no interrupt on the Valkyrie. There just was no Valkyrie, so we have to assume that it was on cooldown, trying to get between lanes faster. Here is the secondary gang. We'll watch for the riposte timing. That was going to be the most important thing. The riposte is successful, but not able to actually proc all the vitals. They look to the fans. They seem pretty happy.
Yeah, the Jin Air fans feeling pretty good about themselves after that play, and that's what you want. That's part of the reason why Seas comes out every once in a while. Definitely knows how to play that aggressive style a little bit less, solo QE and inconsistently compared to Malrang.
So what do we get? We get 20 CS lead for FLICKR over Aatrox. Okay, that means Trinity Force coming in early. That's nice. We get a noticeable CS lead against either opponent over Fiora, which I think is also a big thing here. Fiora, I believe, very early actually now outtrades Aatrox rather than kind of the 1-2 items that used to be the way against most champions for the Fiora. So there's still an air of inevitability about what 2 items on Fiora represent, but her timing's been delayed, which is good news for Jin Air. The problem is that Sejuani around it has gone a very high power build. It's actually CDR boots to playmate. The only reason to go this build is to flash ult more people and just to have CDR, because there is no CDR innately on the Cinderhawk. So Clid is turning his early gold lead into more lane presence, because he moves faster with the boots too, and just more gank attempts. And that is something that I think is important, and that is the thing that's a little bit out of order for Jin Air to consider. If the Piggy's there, they're probably in trouble.
You see he's already looking to make plays up in the top side, although Jin Air coming in as 3 into the river, going to shut down wherever FLICKR was. Grace going to just shuffle down towards the south side, and no action will take place as it seems everybody is going to be spotted. FLICKR had to use his package as well a little bit earlier on, but everybody's looking up towards this top side, of course, because the Rift Herald had spawned about 50 seconds ago, and if they can get control of that, perhaps get a support to roam up, they can start that and get a big objective.
No lethality from Teddy this game. Going to be very standard on-hit build. Upside, Clid. Proceeds.
Okay, trying to get on top of this guy as the stun is going to come in, and double ultimate coming through from the Sejuani. Is the damage there, though, as Clid is going to flash forward, but the Aatrox is going to shut him down! And now the Aatrox is a monster. They just have to deal with him, but Seas is coming back, and this is a disaster for SKT, as Jin Air are going to pick up 2. They're looking for 1 more, but Kahn able to flash and duke his way out, but that's 2 kills for none in favor of Jin Air.
And even though SKT's members responded first and were more aggressive, they just couldn't get that first kill. The Silas lives on about 100 to 200 health. The moment the Azir came in, easy cleanup as he wants Kahn. Won't have the range on it, needs to be half a second more decisive, but this is big for Jin Air Greenwings.
I mean, it's gigantic. It gets them off to such a good start. All the swapping shenanigans in the first blood had us kind of shaking our heads once again, but already you can see that Z is kind of able to bait them into this one.
Clid has an item lead and also a level lead overseas. That's why the play starts. And he also is very on point with his timings around blowing up the passive, then ulting. But if you watch the play here towards the end, he's chasing for that last bit of damage. FLICKR can't get the auto attack. Potentially take down C's. He gets his first Triumph heal. And while Kahn's responding, it's a grouping level 8 Fiora who's behind. What's she to do? Gonna have very little impact here. Aatrox and Azir are much stronger skirmishing champions than SKT's this early into the game. Because they're in position, it shows.
We talked about trying to play make, and here we go again, but the rest of Jin Air showing up. FLICKR able to shoot a bunch of damage in their face once again. Effort trying to come in here, but the Devour is on point. Sees is going to be able to get away once again. They still have not been able to kill the Silence.
No, because Jin Air have been pretty good about responding and reading the map state pretty well. And they were, of course, very active in the lane swapping in the early game as well. And through all those shenanigans that you'd have much less scrims in than a very standard game, creating this chaos that C's really represents as a player has actually done a pretty good job of making this game not as by the numbers as perhaps the draft indicated it would be. Early game may not be extended into the mid to late. It may end up being an SKT grinded up victory, but Jin Air are definitely in the competition 14 minutes into the game.
We've seen a lot of action up towards the top side, obviously from First Blood to crazy skirmishes, but the bottom side has been quietly getting slightly ahead here for Teddy. They've had a little bit of Clid hanging around. You can see that 2 Ocean Drakes already have been picked up also quietly by Clid amongst the action. You can see that is going to translate into 2 extra plates for the bottom lane of SKT.
And right now, though, the hope is to get Teddy and Effort out of lane and put them in the mid lane and start to open up the map a little bit. And getting an outer turret in bot lane would be the easiest way to do so. Right now, the Rift Arrow charge would get most of it, but specifically because Grace has been topside, it's not a master stroke because obviously it's a pretty heads-up thing to do, but it's the thing that stops SKT from saying, okay, Fiora greater than Aatrox even early, therefore Rift Herald soloed at 10 minutes by the Sejuani. They haven't been able to start up Rift Herald, and Rift Herald is so important to open a 4-1 comp, to get the first turret into rotating your troops exactly where you want them, and that was something they expected would be a byproduct of the draft that has been denied because the Azir will always have priority on a Fiora early.
And what has happened in this game is that Jin Air have won a bunch of these fights early, and now they're really focusing on taking the Rift Herald away. It looks like, anyway, Teddy and Effort are going to be able to just push into the bottom side with the Varus and take it down.
It's the first kind of decision I don't necessarily agree with, because actually Jin Air's comp functions way better with turrets up than with turrets down, i.e. no turrets killed on both sides. It's a shorter top lane for the Azir to work in. The moment that outer turrets are down, Azir, even though he can have a lot of mobility, there's a limit to it, right? There is gank paths you can take to potentially shut you down. So regardless, they do pick up that post 14-minute Rift Herald. If that same play was happening at 10 minutes with plates in the consideration, I think it's pretty good. In this spot, this is actually pretty good accuracy from C's.
Yeah.
On the stolen ult there. We'll see if Teddy can live up to it, hit his own ults. There's the potential that Azir can't just stick around against Fiora. The Hydra is done, so some of the chip damage is less meaningful onto that Fiora. And here is Fiora.
Kahn really doesn't seem to care. Is able to riposte the sweep away, as now Root is going to flash, but it looks like he's still going to be dead, as the follow-up and the fade away from Teddy to lock him down will net them a kill.
The line skill shots are good. The Fiora suddenly has the ability to curl around, come over a wall, and get into melee range of the Azir. And this is the part of the game where Jin Air usually trip up. Not going to say they've fully tripped just yet, but I'm looking at their shoelaces, Valdez, and they're untied. That's a bad sign.
Looks like it's slow motion, as, you know, in the movies. They first step onto their shoelace and they're slowly falling through the air. That's the feeling I'm getting, exactly, Papa. Thank you for the sound effects. As, I mean, it's just everything falling apart once again. Fiora's winning a trade. They kill Root. They're able to take the top turret. FLICKR 1v2 is taking the mid turret. So it's absolutely not the place you want to be in, as FLICKR just really doesn't care about Jin Air and knows that he can stick around and take it by himself.
Gonna watch the top side here. So Root's around the corner trying to get some free poke onto Varus. Problem is, doesn't have river control, so skill shot accuracy just as good from the SKT side. They get their man. We get the reaction shots. T1. I love the gold clap from the fan on the left side there.
Yeah.
Grace already isn't getting to overextend and abuse, and this is what I was mentioning. In a short lane, when everything's defined, when the turrets are up, playing the lane goes one way, but the moment turrets go down, you know, it's the same thing where you forget your turret is down and you just walk to the safe, to an area you assume is safe, and suddenly you're still getting ganked there, you're still getting flanked from there. Similar properties with being able to pop over a wall as the Fiora and take better trades. It's not going to lead to competitive CS just yet, but it's 2 items in, and when that next completed item is there, Fiora, as we know, a very different proposition.
All right, so Jin Air, they say, okay, enough with getting picked off and pushing a side lane. Let's bring the Fiora to us. Let's come in 5-on-5, do a little bit of A-ramming, and see if we can get a ram onto that one, and maybe even isolate Kahn here, who does have to flash away. Takes a little bit away from their mid push, but at least they do get that summoner.
The Guani ult does hit onto Grace.
Okay, and now we're ulting onto Effort here, who does have that stopwatch. The slow going strong here up against Jin Air. FLICKR trying to do his best and nearly kills Root by himself with that one rocket, the big one, straight to the face. And the poking is so real. You mentioned it, especially when the items come up, but even already, Corki and Varus doing their thing.
Absolutely, and that's why the fight was started. Clid throws out an ult, it gets a devour, and then suddenly it's Corki and Varus with a long leash to throw out poke, and even Root can't match it.
Hunting season.
Hunting season. It wasn't likely to lead to a kill. I was actually surprised with how much damage FLICKR was doing already.
Yeah.
But guess what it was likely to lead to? You shake up a Coke can, you're not surprised if it spurts out there. You put enough poke in, you're not surprised if a Mountain Drake falls out for SKT. They're able to pick up that objective because they knew the poke would get health bars low enough. They could get the resting objective. A Mountain, much higher value than those 2 Ocean Drake as the game goes on. They're definitely plotting a Baron before too long.
Yeah, it just feels like, as we mentioned before, Jin Air, once it gets to the mid game, they're like, okay, now what do we do? You know, they can have their aggressive junglers, dive onto turrets, get their lanes ahead, and all of that good stuff. They can be up 3,000 gold, and then they just flounder for, you know, 2, 3, 4 minutes with not enough vision, not enough communication, and leads are thrown, and games are not closed out. I feel like that's their major problem that we've been seeing repeat itself over and over again nowadays.
I think it's the likely thing that happens when you have a team with low experience is that we see Jin Air trip up in very honest fashion in 2 different ways. One is when they're ahead in the mid to late game and they just haven't been ahead very much, ostensibly in scrims and definitely in stage games. They just aren't as clean with closeouts. But also when the game state changes from where it was during the laning phase. Speaking of the end of the laning phase, we're looking for some skirmishes.
Now we're poking again here as the immediate cleanse out of Kellin. This guy knows his mechanics. Lindarang over the wall, nearly dies by himself, and now he's being slowed. Is going to get out of there just barely with the Devour. But you can see that SKT still looking for it. Is actually going to hit Kellin, but it's not enough to kill him.
They're going to run a Baron here. They're going to at least consider it. Yep, straight on to Baron.
Yeah, they've done enough poking, and they know that they've pushed these players out. But Lindarang does have his teleport. Let's take a look. Okay, nice block there from Effort as Kahn is able to get that ultimate out of Grace very early. It's down to the wire, and it will go SKT's way. Kahn in a bit of trouble. Is going to be the first sacrifice, though, and Teddy is going to follow suit as Lindarang won't be able to catch the 3-man that jump onto that blasting plant. But the Baron at 2140 is going to be a great objective for SKT.
Going back to that Coke can analogy, didn't know there was still Fizz left in the game, but once again they shake it up with aggressive picks in the enemy jungle, and this time a Baron shakes out of it. The Mountain Drake was definitely the spoiler. They'd be going to that area. They chunk out the jungler again, and now Clid's looking to be a very assertive piggy. Grace not very high in health.
As that thick picky you were talking about before, all the items going one-on-one as that adaptive helm just puts him in the ground. One-on-one, the jungler, and he's even going to recall.
Yep, he's going to get out. Adaptive helm is built to deal with Azir. The item is put together to frontline against the Sand Soldiers. Here is that shakeup, diving in, getting on top of the enemy jungle. Lindarang here is hilarious. This reminds me of if you could ult aggressively as Sion and then nope out straight away with the cowards playing, because he comes in thinking he's flanking and then understands he's never going to get anyone low enough to get that blood well going. Straight out the door, Kahn stops Grace from coming in to harass, and the Baron is claimed by SK Telecom T1.
Grace can't do anything except poke Kahn, who's just trying to, be a savior and help his friends to get out of there. The blasting plant is another true hero. That helps him get to safety. As SKT, now with the Baron, unfortunately they don't get it onto their Fiora, which means that the side push is not going to be quite as strong, especially up against Azir.
Don't know if that will relieve Jin Air Greenwings too much. Down about 3,500 gold. And some of the completed items, we already saw the amusing value of that adaptive helm. So yeah, adaptive helm against the Azir, but this Corki is gone for the high roll build. If he's critting, he's deleting health bars.
All right, now we're thinking about this Abyssal Voyage. FLICKR trying to get over the wall here, and that is not going to work as Kellin NC is going to throw out a bunch of abilities, but not much is going to hit as SKT will be able to get away.
If it wasn't holding the door very well, but still able to disengage that pretty trivially. The moment that Valkyrie comes back up, they can resume his split pushing action. Speaking of split pushes, Fiora has very little info, so actually just focusing on the Gromp for now. Wave spot, not going to be threatening them in 3 lanes just yet. The SKT have multiple ways they can play out this game. I may actually get this Baron power play higher as effort. He's just dead. What? Well, you see, he went alone and died. That's what happened.
Excuse me? Yeah, I mean, really just trying to force it there. I think the communication was way off.
That play only works if Fiora's actually pushing in the bot lane. If Fiora's going for Gromp and then going for the bot lane push, actually Jin Air had the free ability to contest that rush. In the VOD review, it's a very easy one for Koma and Zephyr to explain to Effa what the issue is. FLICKR couldn't push top lane anymore. He had to back away because his Valkyrie was down. Fiora didn't feel like she was safe enough to push bot lane, so she was on the Gromp, and then slowly entering the lane was the Fiora. So there's no map pressure, and map pressure is what stops Jin Air from being able to camp rushes, so Everett thought he could get a rush ward in that he could not. I see you judging him there, Valdez.
I'm judging hard. We'll give him an A+ for effort, but not much else.
I see what you did there. I feel like right now I'm holding up that FLICKR image again. I think a haha emote might be up there as well.
It's a uncanny resemblance, that's for sure. We'll show you guys later again. For you fans who came in late, as SKT, I mean, they're still very far ahead. It's funny to have them be in this position, down 3-7 in kills. Their 2 solo lanes are 0 and 2. It's not that scoreline that you're accustomed to in League of Legends.
But it's been a fun game to watch, because Jin Air came in with a plan that was, we're not going to deal with these crappy lanes, we're going to make it about us, and they achieved it, Valdez. They were playing really well in the first 15 minutes or so. As, okay, re-engage.
Wow, okay.
That's not going to work.
For your guys' information, that was not a blitzcrank.
No, that was Grace going for a big play, but he was halted. They cut him off halfway through. So rude. Don't get a full conversation out of them, and they're going to try and just break the pace again.
Clid's just going to say no, and now FLICKR says, yes, I want to do the damage onto C's, is going to force him away. And now he's going 1v1 onto Root, as Kellen's like, wait, how'd you die so fast?
It's cute.
Yeah, he's going to get that Devour on time. Suppose he was saving it for that moment, as this is without Baron. SKT just able to move on in and take top inhibitor.
It seems like Teddy subscribes to Deft's YouTube channel. The same build coming out here. It's the Blade of the Ruin King Open. It's not an Essence Reaver, but Infinity Edge, Rapid Fire Cannon, traditional carry Varus. is becoming a new favorite among the LCK 80 carries. Gonna see this replay. Grace thinks he's gonna get a huge play here. He's not, because he gets Sejuani ulted as he's about to come through. The ward over the wall was actually the reason they knew to Sej ult when they did, so nice team play from SKT, and it makes Grace look, yeah, a little bit silly.
Yeah, that was, that's a replay he's going to want to forget, but good job by SKT to shut him down. We went to a replay right as Kahn was about to engage one-on-one onto Lindarang. Looks like they both used their ultimates, pressed their buttons, but nobody died. No flashes or anything like that, so it's all good. We didn't miss much.
I see 2 Infinity Edge Seal item complete carries, and it's pretty scary for Jin Air to respond. This is the 4-1 that we forecast in Champ Select playing out. All we need to see is Fiora winning trades against the Aatrox as expected, and then there's just no good decisions for Jin Air to make, barring the most creative of Sylas ult stealing. No 40% CDR. Level 16 shenanigans just yet, and there's a little bit of a love tap. Each future one is going to get pretty aggressive.
All right,
now we're pressuring both sides of the map. What can Jin Air do?
Coming on in now as 3, as Azir is very far behind. Nobody can Z's do it. The answer is going to be no, as Sejuani gets it. Stopwatch is on point from C's, but he's immediately going to go down as FLICKR is going to be swept up there by the Azir, but he just disappears immediately as Teddy is shredding them all in the back line. Kahn says hello, and that's going to be 4 for 0 now as SKT going to be looking to push to win the game.
You knew the 4-1 would come eventually. They delayed Fiora versus Aatrox, but still inevitability when SKT's in the game. FLICKR wants Kellin. It's going to be a team wipe, and SK Telecom T1. It took a lot of hard work. Credit for effort in the early game to Jin Air, but now SKT can close out game 1.
They're able to all get on in there. Clid is going to be a little bit late for the picture, but he did a lot in the picture of this game as down it will all go. SKT, slowly but surely, are able to come to the first victory of the night.
Very cool game between SK Telecom T1 and Jin Air. Not a blowout like you might have imagined. It had to be an earned victory. But MVP of this game, I think, is one that might be difficult for people to vote on. I think there were some mistakes on different sides. Wow, FLICKR looks very lackadaisical in the photo there.
I like the one on the right.
The one on the right's a bit derpy, if I'm going to be real. But
it's like, Kahn, why aren't you playing? Why aren't you doing something, literally?
Well, Kahn did a lot of stuff. If we get a replay of the last fight, Lindarang teleported in.
Hide!
But as he was teleporting in, Fiora took out 85% of his health bar, and he had to stopwatch after the teleport was done, so just couldn't achieve anything. Teddy fighting, support from Hong Kong. Shout out to our fans from Hong Kong. Global fans around everywhere. We met some who couldn't even get a ticket, Valdez, just before we started. Yeah. Because you know what? If there aren't enough Jin Air fans are going to show up, the SKT fans going to come up, buy up those tickets, a Thailand fan as well. The global setting is never more apparent than when SK Telecom T1 are on the Rift. Something you want to do. Wow, we're just taking a tour of the world here, going through the fans.
Yeah, he's saying, I came to watch you from the Netherlands in Korean there on the left.
We've had a couple of
FLICKR
fans
fighting
from the Netherlands. Yeah, shout out to them as well. The world tour is here. That is for sure. Is that a Nico on the top right? Nico banned away. I like the hide on bush health bar as well there.
Yeah.
Feels a bit like an exhibition.
We have a lot of
here.
Signs out here, guys.
We do. And there's a FLICKR head. I like it.
Yeah. That's the giant one from before.
I know, it's great.
I love it.
Uh-oh, Pengu's dabbing. The dabbing Pengu is gone.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I mean,
FLICKR got to dab on some health bars as well as the game went on here. I wonder if he'll win the MVP. My vote was for Clid. I thought his early jungling was supremely clean. But I think there's plenty of other people that could be arguably picking up the MVP in this first game. 29-22, a game of two halves. First half, Jin Air, love what they did. They took away what we knew was a pretty inevitable late game state, and they did that really well. But the late game, I feel like we all saw the moment, right? They all saw the moment where they were caught, and then from there, SKT took them down pretty easily.
Just one moment, and Jin Air falls apart like a house of cards. We've seen this before in the mid game from them. Unfortunately, it happens once again in this game up against SKT. SKT, I suppose they can be happy about the win at least.
Things to improve on. Things to
sure.
improve on. The VOD review for that one will be useful for SKT. So, on to game 2.
빨간 팀의 포탑이 파괴되었습니다.
나오는 중. 야, 진성이만 때려봐. 진성이 나 이거 갈게. 알아서 먹은 거 같은데? 먹었다. 나 물렸고. 브라운 노플. 아니 뭐야, 사이 노플. 왼쪽 아트텔. 아트텔 왼쪽이야. 앞달피. 이제 먹는 거 없다. 이거. 이거 아지르 노플. 앞달피야. 아트부터 잡았네. 야, 끝낼 생각하자.
나를 건너줘.
야, 잡아줘.
탑으로 가면 끝난다. 탑으로 가면.
탑으로 와. 야, 형 여기 상캐티.
맛있게 먹었다 미안하다.
상캐티.
아니 걔들.
빨리 탑으로 와.
상캐티 앞서 떼줘. 앞에 안무비 해봐 이거. 아, 피 없네.